All right, everyone. Welcome to the weekly API meeting. Looks like we've got the normal group who's joined for the week. So there's just a couple housekeeping things I wanted to go over. First of all, we had I posted a link and I put it into the minutes and notes on the demo that Intel gave during the use case meeting. If you guys want to take a look at that, it was both Intel and Ericsson actually. But if you want to take a look at that and put together any questions you may have related to that, or we can bring it up in a discussion, we can plan to have that in a future week. I talked with Mike Lynch and the guys who gave the demo, and they basically said, well, let's have everybody look at the replay from the recording and then give feedback or any comments from that. So if you guys can do that, that would be appreciated, and then we can plan something.
Yeah, this is John Griffin here from Intel actually as well. So yeah, I'd second that as well, Mark. If if people have any comments or questions, and please let us know. And if we could schedule maybe something in the future, API meeting, that'd be really useful. I think we can also put in the Ericsson guys as well, I think.
Yep. Yeah. So, any questions that you may have, just go ahead and post them on Slack. We can start collecting them up, or you could post them on the OPI channel, either place. And then beyond that, we're going to have a couple of things that were requested this week. One, Vipin wanted to go through the backend API related to the storage. So we've got that on the agenda. And Marcia, if we've got time, is got a demo of some of the tools and testing tools. So with that, I'm going to let Vipin kind of go through what he's put together for the backend and storage. So we're kind of shifting gears into storage, at least for this week.
Before we jump into that, I wonder if
Sure, Dan, go ahead.
We talked about in the TSE today that we would have each of the groups come in with a status. Each of the work groups would come into the status of the TSC, and I wonder if we should take some time to talk through what that would be. I guess it would be better if we had the status to something written down that we could poke at. But maybe my question is, what would be the process for us to kind of get our thoughts organized for that type of request?
Okay, so what we'll do is I can put together a straw man of where the status is on the different areas. Main focus areas so far have been, number one, working through the storage, because we've got a lot of work on storage and defining that API. Second piece is we've got a high-level security API that's been put together, at least around StrongSwan. And then, of course, the third piece has been around what do we do with networking, given all of the different solutions that are currently in existence within the networking scape. And in addition to that, we've spent a lot of time focusing on the CNI level and looking at it from a containerization aspect. So if you want, I can put together a high-level status view, and then we can collectively as a group kind of go through it and see what kind of changes, additions, and then next steps that we want to do. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would also be the direction and plans. So what are the current direction and plans from each working group? And I haven't asked you yet in text chat, but I will.
Okay, no problem. I have it in my head, so yeah, I'll put it on paper. Okay, any other topics that we want to cover before I turn it over to Vipin to go through the back end suggestions that he has? Okay, so Vipin, if you wanted to cover the back end storage.
Yeah, Mark. I started the discussion on Slack, and we started to have some back and forth there. I don't know if Boris is here, but But I was
Boris
hoping
said he
to.
won't be able to join today. Sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. I really wanted him to be here as well. So even though I asked for the slot, unfortunately, with him not being here, I don't know if we can discuss some of those things. But what I want to do is probably encourage people to respond to some of the strawman proposal that I was making to the backend API changes. And we can, like, I'm happy to put more pictures and those kind of things to it so we can understand what these changes are bringing. But at least at a high level, I did put out there on what the changes are on February 27th, and so far one response from Boris. So, oh yeah, then also responded, but yeah.
Okay. So if we can ask the team to take a look at the Slack channel on the storage.
Yeah,
discussion.
that'll be awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to put slides. I was talking to Boris offline, and he was saying that let's discuss it, and then if I could create a formal proposal on top of it, that'd be
Okay.
great.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Where is
so
this discussion? I'm looking at the API Slack and I don't see it.
it should be in the
Um,
there's a project storage, which is
Oh,
related to that. And there's a discussion that Vipin started on the 27th there.
okay. I guess I'm not on that one. I missed that one.
Okay, yeah.
I'll get on
I'm
that
glad.
one. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think as long as we get to like put out all the consensus details there.
But if there's a
the
deck
further-
that captures the current thinking, I think it might still be useful to have the deck be circulated.
We'll do that. Yeah. Why don't I do that? Then?
Yeah, I
And
think
Billy, I just added you to the project storage.
Thanks. I was just adding myself. I think you beat me to it. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll add some kind of presentation also to the channel.
That would be great. Thanks, Vipin.
Okay. So yeah, once we have wrapped our mind around it, maybe we can use next meeting to discuss and conclude this.
No, that'd be great.
Thanks.
Okay. So the next thing that we had, at least for today's agenda, which is again, we're kind of diverging from our CNI discussions that we've had. I think Marseille had a demo of the tools that he was bringing forward. So Marseille, if you wanted to go ahead and do that, we can cover that right now, and then we'll move on to other topics beyond that.
Sure. Let me share my screen. So I made a pull request for a POC for OPI testing. It's all in here, and basically what I'm proposing is some scenarios of traffic source and destination and combinations that could be done. There was some agreement on Slack to use Python for automating scripts. I know there are also Go libraries, but we talk about Python to use PyTest as a test framework. I'll show also how we use OPI APIs, a test case in here, to supplement basically or complement the OPI APIs which are missing and to control systems. I'm using NetMiko package, and I'll give you more details about it. A testbed file, a proposal how to keep passwords to have them secret and not risk to publish them on GitHub, and a traffic generator proposal as well. So all it's with open source tools and free, so there is no paid here. So this is the pull request. There are a bunch of files in here, and I'll go through them. So first, the scenarios which I'm covering, it's a reduced version of the testbed for OPI testing. It's a server which has a standard NIC, 100 gig NIC with 2 ports, and the DPU with 2 ports. Now in OPI, we have here a 100 gig switch in between. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Okay, we have also a switch in between, but I removed it. When we have only 2 servers, I can directly connect them. So that simplifies the test bed. The other element here is that we could have a NIC or a DPU with only 1 port and all the scenario works. This just shows everything that is possible. And we have traffic generator container started on host, DPU host, or on the server. And we could do any possible scenario of traffic going from this server to the host through the DPU, going from host to host, going from server to host. Why would we do that? I'm not getting in details. That's up to each scenario. I'm just showing it's possible to send these combinations of traffic. So just to give you better examples, so we can send from the server through the DPU back here. We can send from here through the DPU to the host, and from the host to the DPU and back to the host. Again, I'm not getting into why we need to do that. I'm just showing that it can be done. And also, I'm going to showcase how we do sending traffic from a test server with IPsec that it's, let's call it, not accelerated by the DPU through the IPsec on the DPU and to the host or the server. What is not covered, but it is possible, to start the traffic generator containers on the DPU itself. So not on the host server, but actually on the DPU. And this is possible if the cores on the DPU are x86 or ARM cores, and we can have Docker on the DPU, either pre-install or we can install it after. So kind of these are the scenarios. I know DPUs where I can do this, and I know DPUs where I cannot do this. But this will not be covered today. Testing framework, as I mentioned, cases automated with Python, test framework, PyTest, and for SSH connectivity, NetMiko, which is based on Paramico. For traffic generator, there are a few options here, like PTF container, T-Rex, and Open Traffic Generator. This is where I am, biased, because I have experience with this one, and Keysight, the company I'm working for, is contributing heavily in here. So you can take this as my personal bias, and I'll go into details about this. And I have here, basically to run the cases, we just need to git clone the project, install the requirements, and then just PyTest and call the test. With few caveats, let's call it, and I'll go through it. One, on the Bluefield 2 that I'm using, if I'm changing, for example, certain settings, and this is an example, you need to reboot the host. And I don't have that automated. This was a manual step. The paths to the file were at this hard-coded on my path. I synced the repo in my root folder. Okay, maybe people don't like this, but this is where I synced it. So Docker requires for mounting files some absolute path. So I hard-coded where I have the files. This is another one. It assumes these files are present in the respective system. I did not automate the git pull in there. Git pull was a manual step. And there was an assumption about Docker being present on the DPU to be able to, for IPsec, to start this OPI API endpoint there. So these are few assumptions done. And now, so for the Open Traffic Generator, it has a website. All this, it's basically open and free, the spec and everything. Then we have containers, like I said, for x86 and ARM. And Snappy, it's an implementation of the API, and it's also like free to use. For package, for SSH connectivity, a bit more detail. So NetMiko is just using Paramico, which is the SSH Python client, which I say it's the best that I found so far, with the only comment that NetMiko provides drivers and understands about all these devices, usually networking devices, and also has the ability to add our own device in here if we want, and also provide the standard, the one which I use it's called Linux, and just does SSH, and does a lot of work that you'll have to write in code if you just use Paramiko directly. So this was one of the reasons. And now we can go into demos. So let's go a bit through the PyTest portion. So I created some fixtures, one for the DPU, and we have the DPU IP and the DPU password as the input parameters. And these are the commands that are being sent to the DPU to set it up for traffic to be able to flow. One comment that I have here, for example, as the OPI APIs for networking, for example, become available, I believe most of these commands should be actually replaced with OPI APIs. I mean, like setting the IP on the interface is something that I demoed with VPN on the Pensando card through the proposal of OPI API, but yeah, here on the Bluefield that I use was not available. So this should be replaced by OPI APIs. Enabling forwarding IP tables, this may be ACL APIs. Adding different MACs to the ARP table. I have not seen yet a provision in OPI API, but if it will not be there, we can continue using SSH commands to send it.
So are all this now sent over SSH?
Yeah, so whatever is not available in OPI API yet, we can complement and send it over SSH. And as they become available in OPI, I think it will be good to, keep replacing them as APIs becomes available.
What is currently available in OPI API that you currently use here?
Yeah. So, for example, here in this demo, I'm using all the IPsec OPI API to configure the IPsec.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is a setup area, and this is a cleanup area, and this is done also. So the DPU, this is the server with the standard NIC, and this is the host of the DPU in case it needs anything. And then I have 3 cases where we are sending traffic from the server to server through the DPU, host to server through the DPU host, basically, and from DPU host to DPU host also through the DPU. So these are the 3, and let's just give it a quick run. And I will go back to the diagrams.
There are other steps here that you haven't included. What's the expectation in terms of what state should the machines be in before we run this thing?
Yes. So this is where I went here through this kind of gotchas, where these are the manual steps. One, at least for this DPU, I set this one manually. And then the paths through the files that are present in this Git repo, I had it in these paths, which are hard-coded. So first you need to have these files, you need to do these commands manually, and you need to have a Docker running on the DPU. I do not remember actually if the Docker image I got from NVIDIA has actual Docker running on this image, or I installed Docker after. But this is the other requirement. So I put all the manual steps are here in notes. Everything that is not automated in the script, it's mentioned in here.
So if I had to have an OS provisioned on the DPU, that would probably be somewhere here is where I would put the step in.
if you have to have an OS provision on the DPU, I mean, I'm assuming that there is an OS on the DPU. At least all the DPUs I had, they come with the image that it's functional. I never got a DPU from anyone that doesn't have any working image. May not be the latest, but
Okay.
Okay, so let's go and start this. Okay, so this will deploy all the containers needed and it will run the traffic. Okay, this is the first test. Now there are improvements which can be here. Like I'm tearing down the containers and I'm bringing them up for every test, which is not needed. They could be deployed in the beginning. All three cases could run on the same thing. And also here I can show TCP dump. We can see the packets coming here and it went away. But we could see how the traffic comes on the interfaces on the server and on the DPU, and how the traffic went. And with TCP dump, basically we can see the packets and we could see here the counters as a test run. So these three cases run. This or one, it takes about 10 seconds for each. And then we had, this is now with IPsec. So with IPsec, what we are doing, we have an extra container on the server. So this already went through. With the IPsec, we have an extra container here that will provide the control plane, basically initiate the IPsec connectivity with the DPU. And this could be extended, this demo, to any protocol here. So for example, you can take a FRR container. I'm not sure. FRR provides protocols like BGP, repo, I don't know, it has a bunch of protocols. And it's also open source and free. We could put here FRR container, and the FRR container will ensure the control plane, let's call it BGP, for example, to establish a BGP session with the DPU or something else, and send the traffic over it. So the IPsec demo, you can take it and replace the IPsec container here with any other container that provides control plane to achieve any other scenario. And I know about the F5 proposal with Nginx. I think we could do probably something similar. I'll have to see what's happening there. Now, regarding the scripts, if we look at this diagram, you see I put the scripts here on the server. In these other diagrams, I put it somewhere here outside of the server. And as you see, I'm running it from my Windows machine from VS Code. It doesn't matter where the script runs. It could run anywhere. We can run it in a container on the host, on the server. We can have a dedicated server for hosting the scripts in the OPI testbed. Anything it can be anywhere, basically. So I think with this, yeah, this is a demo. This is working, and I think we should start taking parts where people, at least the ones that people are agreeing with, and start creating maybe a testing repo under OPI and start contributing cases and getting scenarios and start automating them and so on. Ideally, to validate this, I have one more comment. I would like for the at least IPsec case to have here also the Pensando DPU. I know Vipin, you mentioned a while back that should work also on Pensando, and actually validates that the same test can work using OPI APIs on at least 2 vendors, if not more, just to validate that we are on the right path with the testing. Because it shouldn't matter what DPU we have here, the same test should be able to execute. Okay, that's all I had, unless there are questions. And
so in your diagrams, Mircea, what do the colored arrows mean? What do the different colors represent?
Oh, I just put together all this scenario. Like, for example, this is server going traffic going from the server through the DPU on port 1, being forwarded on port 2, coming back to the server. So this is like the blue path. And then the red path, it's from the test server going through the NIC, from the NIC going to the DPU, and from the DPU going into the host, DPU host server. This is the red path. And this diagram here is just combining all of them, showing that you can go from container 3 to 2, 2 back to 2. You can do any combinations
so-
here.
so-
I put on, yeah.
The purple is host through DPU back to host,
Yeah.
the purple, yeah, okay.
What about the black one?
Oh, this is just connectivity, and this is just Docker Compose between the traffic generator API controller and the actual containers which are generating the traffic. Because in this case here, the controller actually connects to containers on a different machine, and it's possible we just pass the IP of this host and then the port that it's open and listen each container. So I was showing that all scenarios are possible. Of course, in a scenario where you have only the host DPU, we could start everything here. We don't even need the server, the TGen, if we want to test something like this.
And remind me, you're testing both NVMe traffic and Ethernet traffic, or is this just Ethernet IP traffic?
At this moment, it's all Ethernet. All these are like pure Ethernet, and this is adding also IPsec.
Okay, Ethernet.
Basically, it's sending it and send it through the IPsec tunnel.
Okay. And
but
then
there is no NVMe. That the storage demo, it's next one, 2-3 weeks from now, whenever we have it ready. Yeah.
And do you have a plan to do them simultaneously? Because that would be very powerful in my opinion.
I have a plan to show a demo for storage next. And as I work on that, I'll see how I can marry the two, but no promise I'm going to marry them, at least for the upcoming demo.
Okay.
I promise it will be storage only. If it's anything more, that will be, cherry on the cake. All right, so the PR, it's there. I don't know, people can comment directly in the PR, or yeah, probably it will be best in the PR, everybody to provide feedback and so on. And if you want to try it, ping me, and if I forgot to mention something about some manual step or so on, I'll help you get going.
Mircha, good demo. I just want to make a comment on what KY was asking a while ago, right? So this is not looking at the provisioning part of it. So it's assuming that DPUs have come up to certain stage and building on top. I think that's what you were talking about, right?
About installing the image, how the DPU got an IP and all this. Yeah, I can go a bit in details about this, but for example, my case in the lab, because I change images on these servers and DPUs quite often. I have, for example, a DHCP server where the management of the MAC of all the interfaces is there, and I have all these IPs hard-coded in my DHCP server, and I always know DPU blah gets IP blah because this is how I have it. I mean, but that's kind of my lab, how I do it. But I'm interested how OPI wants to do provisioning, not how I do it in my lab.
Yeah, exactly. So this is not showing some aspects of that yet.
No, it assumes the server has booted with, it says like an Ubuntu 2022, whatever. How you get the image over Pixie, boot, and through the DHCP. That's, yeah, I didn't describe all that. Yeah. It assumes it came up. And it assumes the DPU has an image and so on.
No, I'm just addressing KY's question that there is a provisioning. There's a lot of work happening over there. So this is not quite showing those aspects of, in what we host and the DPU will come up and what binaries they run, and how do they come up and all that. So this is assuming certain things are present and moving forward. With
So
what,
Venkat,
yeah.
one of the reasons I brought that up was, the current use case here, again, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like there is a functionality for doing the IPsec handshake, if you will, in the DPU itself. And so it's not done in software. So there are many other use cases of DPU where we're going to run some DPDK application or whatever it is on the DPU to extend the functionality of DPU in some interesting ways. Maybe, flow matching and this, that, and the other thing we could do in software. So there needs to be testing for both, built-in functionality on the DPU and software extensible functionality on the DPU that, might take a whole new range of, test cases.
Yeah, so one of the examples here for that portion, for example, on the DPU itself, let me go to this scenario. The OPI API endpoint, it's not there by default in the image. So this is something that is being added extra. This container, it's added extra in the DPU, and this is the OPI API endpoint. It's one of these apps that is built on top of the clean standard image. And
Okay.
but this gets pulled first time when it gets started. This would get pulled from the repo. I have to specify my lab has internet access. I know a lot of labs do not have internet access. So that's another assumption here, because this will get pulled live if you have internet access. If you don't have it, will just fall here. And similarly, you could pull other binaries and other apps on top of a standard image.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I'll stop the share if no other questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the group?
Just a quick comment, right? So I don't want to digress this discussion, but the earlier TSC we discussed about how there may be some kind of a layering of abstractions and then the APIs. So if you could give me like a few minutes, I'll quickly summarize that towards the end of the meeting.
Okay, not a problem. Stephen, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, so Mircea, that all looks very good. I'm curious if you are aware of the test cases that are sort of built into the Strong Swan bridge that we have today.
Yes.
And as part of our CI/CD pipeline. And then two, how do you see the relationship between what you have done and what we already have going forward?
Yeah, so if you are talking about these ones, and basically what's happening here with the Docker Compose, what I see the difference here is that here it's not necessarily using a DPU. These are in between two Strong Swan containers and just exercising the API. And the difference is here that this demo is basically sending a ping from one IP to the other, while I'm putting a traffic generator container that could send any packets, not just ping. You can actually, let me go a bit through that portion of the code. You can build a flow and you can build a packet with anything where you can have Ethernet, IPv4, IPv6, UDP, VXLAN, IPv4, I don't know. You can do all kind of Mac in Mac. I mean, you can build your own stack here with your own values and just send that on the wire. It's basically, I think this is a superset of this. I mean, I used all this work that was already here. Like you see, I'm using same Docker Compose, similar containers, except that on the DPU, I'm actually using the DPU IPsec capability. And then instead of sending a ping, I'm actually building packets any way I want. to send the packets on the wire. But yes, I mean, I started from here.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to poke at is, do you think that what you have done is something that could replace the testing that's done in the current CI/CD pipeline?
This is a proposal, and as I'm going through these diagrams, so let me go through. Let me open this in a new tab. I'll answer. Give me a second. So if we go to lab, and we look kind of what is the proposal for the lab test bed with the servers with the DPU and NIC. As I'm showing here, this is a reduced version. So basically I eliminated the switch because I don't need to interconnect multiple servers. And I use the same diagram from here, and I just connected directly the DPU to the NIC. Again, in OPI lab, we'll have the switch in the middle. And this is a diagram. It's just simplified of OPI API. And the idea is to have these test cases run in OPI API lab when it's up, and have it as part of the CI/CD, not only at software level, but actually on actual DPUs on this test bed. So that's the intent. I mean, I want to create a OPI API / testing repo, and where we start to contribute test cases and so on with elements that everybody agrees. So everybody agrees we should do Python. Okay, I'll write in Python. We want PyTest as a framework. We'll do PyTest. We want, this is why I think this is a good way to give feedback. The purpose of this demo is to move this to become the testing for OPI API.
Okay, great.
It's a
what I was
proposal.
poking
It's
at.
a
Thank
start. It's something to have something to hang on and provide comments. Everybody and say, no, I don't think this will work, or I want this change. I think this is a place to do it, because the intent is to create from this, like I said, the testing repo where we start contributing cases to test different APIs that are becoming available in OPI. Yeah, and these diagrams are nothing but like simplified, this test bed.
Yep.
They're logical. This is showing physical connection. This is a logical diagram and using a subset of that.
Yeah, and
they're trying to get there incrementally.
And as OPI builds this lab, what I'm doing, I'm building a copy of this, in order to be able to test by myself and contribute cases.
Yeah, so I mean, what I was really just poking at is that we now have, two different sets of test cases for IPsec in these repos, and do we see one replacing the other?
This ties in a different discussion. So I'm part also of Dash, Sonic, and then communities and so on. What this test case that's already here present, it's all software. Yes. This includes the DPU. I don't think they will replace each other. I see things if I look at Sonic, they have virtual Sonic, they run the cases on the virtual appliance, and then they run it on the actual hardware with Broadcom, whatever, Tofino and so on, ASICs. Probably we'll do the same. We'll validate the APIs in software to make sure they work, and then we're going to deploy it on DPUs and make sure they continue to work. So I don't think it will replace. I think both of them will be needed, and you have the software version, and then you have the hardware deployment.
Well,
I don't think it will replace. I think they will go in parallel.
Because I haven't dug into your code yet, but based on what I've seen, it looks like with a small change, yours could be run as pure software as well.
Correct. Yes.
So it could do both.
Yeah. So only replacement here, I'll have to put here the traffic generator container, and instead of ping, to actually write the packet the way I want to be sent.
Right.
Yes, it can do both. That is correct. And in Dash project, we do the same. We have a software version of the Dash DPU called BMV2, and we start BMV2 container along with the traffic generator container, and we run the tests.
Then Kat, you got your hand.
Yeah, so there are two aspects to, I just want to clarify some of the discussion, right? So there are two aspects to it, right? So the way this is being developed is that the same script should run for 1 packet per second in software. If we have behavioral models of DPUs, right? That's a separate discussion. And then so that means the traffic generator here is a container right now. So there is a software to hardware on the traffic generator side. At the same time, the device under test also could be a behavioral model, and then we'll eventually go to multiple DPUs from multiple vendors. So both are being covered based on the experience from some of these other forums like Dash and others.
Okay, KYS.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand, if what is being presented here is a test case that can be run, or is it more a framework where any test case can be run that will produce the logging, and if something doesn't work as expected, where do we generate the logs that tell us exactly what went wrong, and how do we collect those logs? So to me, the framework should do some kind of a setup portion where whatever needs to get provisioned will get provisioned, and then the system under test is hit with whatever the test we want to run against it, and then we collect some logs, and then there's the processing of logs to understand exactly what happened and be able to pinpoint which component didn't work as expected. So those are all the pieces that should come together. I'm trying to understand if this is really addressing all of it or only part of it, and the other parallel efforts that have gone on that were being discussed a moment ago, are they more complete with regards to really addressing all these 3 phases of what a test bed should look like?
So it's opening the discussion to it. It's covering both a test, 4 test cases, as well as the framework, but it's opening the discussion, does not have all the problems solved. Like I said, it's there so people can comment and provide feedback. It's a starting point.
Right.
Like,
so aspirationally, you want to get there. You want it to be a full.
Yes, that is correct. And as a lab becomes online, we'll have to have a GitHub runner there, so it gets triggered, results published back in GitHub, logs saved probably there. I would prefer, I think, and that was the agreement, to actually have it as part of GitHub and have the log there as part of the CI pipeline that GitHub provide, have a runner, triggers the test, the log becomes available in GitHub, like, through the GitHub actions. And I can do a demo about that, how we can run a private runner and so on is not, but, it will be linters here and it will be another one here, I don't know, OPI, API, DPU test or something. And it will run, and the logs, I think the agreement was the logs and the test cases results to come in here and have it available here. But the lab needs to come online to get all these portions. But
the additional logs from the DPU itself, right? We look at results from end user perspective, which could be either the traffic generator or the receiving end of it. But what happened on the DPU should also be gathered. And so the logs, the timestamps to be collated and all that. Most in the DPU.
Yes. So we should capture all this feedback, and definitely we should capture all
the
these
reason I
logs.
brought that up is I wanted to see if one of the other efforts that was discussed is already closer to where we want it to be compared to this, or is this in a more advanced stage?
I would say this is more advanced. This actually show it running on the DPU. I don't think any previous work or on but now regarding the logs, we'll have to discuss, maybe different meeting, because different vendors are having logs in different places. and different ways to retrieve it. Sure, we are using StrongSwan here on Bluefield too, but not everybody uses StrongSwan, for example.
Right. So maybe, the telemetry and collecting logs ought to be also part of the OPI API, if you will, because that's
exactly. Maybe they will have something like Get Diagnostic or something, and it gives you a link to a zip file with all the relevant logs for that, and we store it for, I don't know.
That's an area where I think it's great to standardize in terms of how to access what's already collected on the.
Yes.
Okay, Stephen, I think your hand's up next.
So a couple of points, just a clarification is that, one of the POC repo tests does run on actual DPU today. So it's under the integration test. There's a deployment scenario where you can configure a subset of all of those software containers to run on a DPU and the rest run on a host somewhere. So that is something that exists today. Two, as far as logs.
Do you mind putting a link in chat so I can have a look? I'll integrate that in my demo as well if it's something I can do.
Sure.
Thank you.
So two, the discussion around logs and telemetry. So that is, I believe, covered under the lifecycle, provisioning and lifecycle management work group. So like in terms of telemetry, we've settled on using OTel for collecting telemetry, and there are APIs and things for that already. I don't think we've done anything around standardizing how to collect logs, but that would be another discussion point for that work group.
Okay, Venkat, you got your hand up?
Yeah, so I'm just maybe I'll quickly summarize, right? So this is incremental work. I think this may I'll go on a limb and say this is an improvement from what was already there to answer KY's question. And I think we will have few of these. And when we get to the lab is when I think there is only one way all the scripts or all the test cases would look like. By then we would have standardized. So this is a way of a way for us to get there incrementally.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Well, we have 8 minutes left, so I don't believe that we can really cover anything else in that short a period of time. I just want to reiterate the fact that it would be good for the teams to go out, take a look at this pull request, provide any comments there. Also take a look at the thread in the project storage that's talking about the backend storage suggestions that Vipin has put forward and is in a discussion thread. And then finally, also take a look at the link of the recording for the demo that was done with Intel and Ericsson. And let's put together any questions that we may have, and we can schedule a discussion around that particular topic area and that particular API suggestion that is laid out in that demo particular area.
Hey Mark, could we schedule a date for that kind of discussion to happen? Would it be like next week or in a couple of weeks, or when people get a chance to have a look at the demo?
I'd like to try to do it next week if we can. That would be a really good thing to go through, because I know, John, that you guys put a lot of work into the demo, as well as kind of laying out a high-level API framework related to that demo.
Yeah, and in particular, I guess we'd like to get some feedback on the API that we proposed and that was included. So we'd obviously like to get that part of the OPI API if it was possible, or if we had to make changes in that API and contribute that, we'd be very amenable to that.
Great.
So yeah, absolutely. If people had a look at the demo and question us, and we could maybe talk about it next week if that works for people.
Yep, no, we'll put that onto the schedule for next week, definitely.
Okay.
I think that's a really good thing to do. And the link for the recording is actually in the February notes, so you can get that just by pulling it from the repo. Joe, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, just I asked in the TSC call about the networking models and when we might expect to see a proposal or a couple of proposals for the recommended overall networking model for OPI compliant DPUs in the TSC to vote on.
Okay.
What's the timeline for that? And that's really, I guess, a question to a combination of you and Vipin and a couple of others.
Right. Okay. We will circle on that one and try to get an answer back to the TSC on that.
Okay. All right, that was on him.
I think we have some more work to do on that. I don't think we really, I think we have a proposal out, but I don't think we really, we're able to sort of go through it or propose alternatives. And I also just don't know what the current proposal would attach to, and so that's why I was trying to bring that discussion back to, where did we land with OVN, and what are we doing to interconnect with the existing open source solutions out there for networking. So
yeah, and that's the difficult topic on this, Dan, is because Vipin's put forward one for cloud, so we have a cloud area that's in there. We also recognize that there's open config, and there's kind of a common view that needs to be looked at from networking. We also recognize that there's OVS OVN that has to be considered in this. So we're trying to, number one, come up with all of the different proposals for solutions, and then there's an assessment from a networking perspective where we have to take a look at those different solutions and see, is there something common that we can focus on, and then have specifics for the different areas. So that's part of the difficulty there. Venkat, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, so we discussed a little bit about this in the TSC. I just want to quickly summarize, right? Again, I mentioned Vipin's name. I was thinking I would repeat it here when he's around. Looks like he left, so I'll talk to him offline. So one suggestion I made there, I'll talk to Vipin offline, is early on in some of the discussions, he had a very good model, which I liked, and about how we look at this as a layered, for lack of better way to say, platforms. At the lowest level, we have a bunch of objects, and then there is a config level, there is a maybe application development level, and then application deployment level, right? I'm saying it slightly differently than what he has, but I can work with him offline and put that in. The reason for that is some of the proposals each of them are at a different level. If you look at Ericsson plus Kubernetes discussion from Intel, it's talking at a certain level. And then when you look at Nginx, that's more of an application deployment layer and assuming a lot of things below. And OVS OVN is kind of trying to build this lower level infrastructure, right? And there may be one more below when we talk about object, right? Do we want it to be a model driven so that we have a behavioral model? Maybe it is P4, maybe it is DPDK, or maybe together, right? So I think, defining it that way might be easier for us to converge, and then some of these things may need to go in parallel. All of them have value, I think, instead of selecting one. If we define the layers, we can keep them, do them incrementally. Just like this demo, if you just saw now, right? It assumed a bunch of things on provisioning and built something on top. And then KY brought up, how do we get a binary onto the DPU, was the question from KY, but we could still make progress at a higher level layer without looking at the lower layer. So,
right. Okay, Dan.
Yeah, I want to second everything that Venkat just said. I agree with that. I think that with the motivation of these layers, I think we really just have to get back to what is it that OPI is offering here to these application developers. And I think that will help us answer the question. The networking is so layered and so varied that I think we really need to have a really crisp, like, use these APIs to get this benefit type of statement.
KY.
Yeah, going back to what Venkat said, I love the idea of layering. And as we look at standardizing the OPI APIs, I think it will be good if we start from the bottom and work our way up. Because I suspect there'll be far more interest in converging at the lower level APIs than as we move up the stack.
Okay. Great. So Venkat, if you've got a proposal that you want to put forward for the layering, that will probably be good if we can start bouncing that around.
Yeah, I will try to get started on that. I think I need Vipin because there is certain knowledge gap I have. I'm too much of a hardware side thing guy, and then I need to work with somebody on the Linux interfaces and things like that. So I'll take that as an action item, and I'll talk to him offline and come back and talk about it.
Great, thank you. All right, everyone, I think we're at the top of the hour. So we will meet again next week. Thanks everyone for joining. It's been a good discussion.
Thanks.
Thank you.